It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Everyone, welcome to another edition of 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, along run test enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41.
Yes, as you can tell, I am a vigorous runner in life. I take all the steps, I count them all, and I am going to be running a marathon super soon, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, players never tell us exactly what their times have to be when running those, because I guess Nick Bolton told us about 10 gassers that they have to run, full gassers, 110s, so the 55 yards across the field and back. I mean, if you gave me a couple of days, I could get that done, Nick. I could bang it out, but I don't think that's how much time Andy Reid gives his players.
Yeah, no, it would take me a while, and it would not work out well for me. I've accepted that part of my life. I'm not at that. That was 20 years ago. I still wouldn't even have been good at that. So,
and let's see, Tyreek could get that done in probably about 2 minutes. So.
Yes, well, that's why Tyreek makes $30 million a year, and I do not.
One of the many reasons why Tyreek makes more money than we do.
Well, all right, thanks for joining the podcast. Yeah.
All right, everybody, as you know, Chiefs wrapped up their mandatory minicamp this week, which also put a wrap on the offseason program. Everybody has started to going their separate ways, worlds apart, before they come back to report for training camp in St. Joe a little more than a month from now. July 20th, 21st is going to be the day that everybody starts showing up. But, Nick, I wanted to ask you just about what you saw over the course of this offseason and really encapsulating everything and what you saw coming out of the Super Bowl. Because the last time the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl, we saw some pretty dramatic changes in the organization. What did you see during the offseason program that you felt like was maybe an impact from that Super Bowl loss this year?
Yeah, so there's a reason why I continually asked various people during press conferences about either what they learned from that Super Bowl or how it's impacting what they're doing now in some way. Because I asked Jalen Watson this, and there's a reason why I asked the way I did, is because last year this football team was chasing history. They were chasing something nobody's ever done before, and they were the only team, if I remember correctly, to actually get to the Super Bowl and at least get that far in that aspect of it. So whenever they were getting their AFC Championship rings last year, that's a reminder of how close they were to football immortality. And the pressure, I think, of trying to achieve football immortality, like there was a lot of things last year to where I don't think people understand is that's why I think a lot of those guys rushed back the way that they did from injury, because they knew what was at stake for that football team. To where, when Pacheco comes back and when Jalen Watson comes back and then when Hollywood Brown comes back and, various players, they all didn't want to let the team down when they're chasing football immortality to where they could all be a part of something that had never happened in the NFL before. And so for everybody to get to that point and to be in that moment and for it to go the way that it did, and for the offensive coaching staff to have the struggles they did that day in terms of game plan, for there to be a lack of execution on offense the way that it was, and for them to just look like they didn't have any answers for as long as they did. I don't think they had an answer until 9 minutes or less in the third quarter. And I know because I watched the game this weekend. So without emotion involved in it. So all that collectively combined, what that showcased to me is just how much pressure they were under. And so now the slate is wiped clean. It happened. Are the Chiefs going to hear some stuff from fans about how, about the struggles on the biggest stage and all that stuff from other fan bases or whatever? Yes. But you're not chasing 3 in a row. You're not chasing 4 in a row if they had accomplished it. Like right now, you are just back at 0. You're trying to chase 1 Super Bowl or 1 AFC championship to get back to the Super Bowl. So in my book, the pressure is off in a lot of ways to where the Eagles have taken, with them winning the Super Bowl, they took the pressure off. So it's just a matter of the offensive coaching staff looking inside and internally. What did they do wrong? What did they struggle with game planning wise that Vic Fangio had their number and embarrassed them collectively on the biggest stage possible? So, I mean, that's why I asked Andy what I did. That's why, some of us asked Patrick Mahomes what he, about his thoughts on it in that regard. And Jesse asked him about the Super Bowl and some of the other players along the road. But that, in my opinion, is really what this is all about. This is one of the rare times where they were in a position to where they weren't able to accomplish the goal that they had set forth. And that's very rare in the Patrick Mahomes era that doesn't occur and that doesn't happen. I mean, so let's be blunt. It's only twice they haven't won the Super Bowl. One time they haven't gone back to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship. But every single time Patrick's been the starter, they've at least made the AFC Championship game. So, I mean, just what I'm essentially getting at here, and I can get into the Super Bowl recap real quick at some point, but I don't want to continually filibuster here or whatever you would call it. But yeah, Matt, your thoughts?
I take away one big takeaway from all of these practices and some of the decisions that Andy Reid has made, and even ones that obviously are affecting what's going forward. We're alluding to training camp. Training camp is going to start a little later than usual because Andy Reid's doing away with the rookie mini camp. His stated reason is logical, which is that they don't necessarily have the numbers to be able to do a full practice, anything of that nature. And that has always been a problem at rookie mini camp. You don't necessarily have enough players do 11 on 11. I mean, we saw one year Eric Bieniemy was taking reps at running back so that they could do a practice. And, and so that makes sense from that standpoint. If you can't do an Andy Reid practice the way you want to, why do the practice? But I think it goes more than that because we even saw it with, practices were running short, like a half an hour ahead of schedule. You don't run half an hour ahead of schedule because you're just being super efficient and getting everything done. You're doing that because Andy Reid's cutting stuff out. And I think that of all the things that went wrong in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, I think the one we don't talk about enough is that team hit a wall. I think it was accumulation of everything. And like you alluded to, the pressure of trying to win 3 Super Bowls was part of it. But I think also the accumulation of playing essentially a football season more than a lot of other teams have. The Eagles have played a lot of football too, so don't take that away. But the Chiefs, with everything that they've gone through, there's no doubt. I mean, they've expended more energy than any team in the NFL by far over the last few seasons. And that accumulation, I think, has had an effect. And to your point, it had an effect last year because there were guys who were absolutely gassed by the end of the season. People were, saying that Travis Kelce looked old. Travis Kelce was tired. Isaiah Pacheco was tired. Charles Omenihu was not himself. I mean, for all the people saying that the Chiefs pass rush got better, Charles Omenihu was not Charles Omenihu last year. I mean, that's probably more of a coincidence or maybe just observational bias that the Chiefs were better with Charles Omenihu because Charles Omenihu wasn't himself. And that was true up and down the lineup. That team was tired. And Andy Reid has seemed to manage this offseason, and he's done that over the last few years, but this season more than ever, it just seems like he's managing this offseason with this premise of saying, hey, this team's going to play 2021 games. So let's give these guys the rest because he's like, I'm never going to have another team that's gassed at the way that they were in the most important game of the year ever again.
Yeah. And so in terms of the Super Bowl aspect, the key points I can go back on that stuck out to me is 3. This is the things that we'll be watching ahead down the road here. Is the first part was they were wherever the running back was, that's where they were keen on initially. That's where they were going with their zones. That's where they were kind of reading at is wherever that running back was. That's where they took their first step from a coverage perspective, and then. The Chiefs didn't take advantage of that until honestly the third quarter, whenever they started to have an answer for that, and they were hitting the backside of that opposite of where the running back was. But where the running back was aligned, they normally were taking their first step that way, is what it looked like on that front. And they were hitting they were attacking the offensive tackles at an angle with their rush to collapse the pocket in on Patrick. With the way that the ends were rushing, the way they were bull rushing both tackles up to Patrick, the way they were working up to that front. And so, I mean, Mahomes was trying to buy more time, and there was part of it where some of the receivers, they they weren't going to break off, they weren't able to break off the way that they potentially Patrick was expecting based on some of the zone coverages or whatever was happening on that front. So it looked like they didn't have a lot of answers, and whenever Patrick would normally take off and scramble to be able to create that, that second play, basically, to where it kind of turns into what they call the backyard football by some people, like that wasn't available because of how quick the pass rush was destroying the offensive line back there. And you didn't have a running back who could give you the favorable down and distance, either in the run game from an explosive level or from the ability to check it down to the running back. Just to get 4 or 5 yards and kind of keep it moving on that front. And so in the offense, they were deep in their own territory about 3 different times. One of them led to Cooper DeJean's interception that made it 17-0. And then another one was whenever Mahomes got hit because Tooney got walked back into him. And when Mahomes is throwing, he gets hit at the time he's throwing. And that led to Zach Bond's interception. And then A.J. Brown has a crossing route against Nick Bolton for a touchdown, makes it 24-0 at that point. But those were 2 crucial turnovers that really took it out of the game. On the defensive side, the things that stuck out to me is the pass rush couldn't get there. They couldn't disrupt Hurts within that 3 to 4 second window. He had the time he wanted whenever he wanted to pick on Trent McDuffie versus A.J. Brown, took full advantage of it. And I mean, the Chiefs were relentless in terms of stopping the run game. Like they were relentless. They shut down Barkley most of that game and did a phenomenal job on that front. But with the lack of pass rush being able to get there, that really caused them caused their defense a lot of problems in terms of the time they were on the field. So between the turnovers on offense and the offense not having answers to the zone coverages they were seeing, and then the defense struggling with the pass rush. Those were kind of the 3 things that really kind of derailed them in that Super Bowl game. So then the question becomes, what do you learn from that? And then how do you have kind of, how do you approach this offseason in terms of making sure the offensive line does a better job overall, how the passing offense is less predictable, and how you don't always have the running back on the side where some of the potential reads are going to be that the Eagles were and are keen on. And you're like, why does this all matter? The game's last year. It's done. It's over with. Because every opponent the Chiefs are facing this year is pulling from that to see if the Chiefs will have answers in the first month of it. And if the Chiefs have answers in the first month of the season with it, then teams are going to be like, well, all right, we'll try it here and there, but it looks like they've got their answers to it. So that's kind of why we're talking about that, because that's going to be one of the big storylines over the first couple months of the season.
There are 14 teams that are going over that Super Bowl footage right now because they're getting ready for the Chiefs this season. There's probably a couple of others that hope that they see the Chiefs in the playoffs, and they're watching it too to get ready. I think it is important to look back on what happened in that Super Bowl to see how it is affecting and impacting this year. And, and that kind of leads me into the next part of it is just looking back at this off-season period as a whole and some of the highlights, what we saw is kind of some of the developments. And before we get into that, let's just deal quickly with just kind of the state of this team, because obviously two of the biggest bits coming out of the minicamp was the appearance of Trey Smith and Travis Kelce, because obviously Trey Smith had been absent from the voluntary workouts, but when the mandatory part comes in, Trey was there and seemed in pretty good spirits. We got to see him, doing the videos and the photo shoots on media day and production day on Monday, and then was out there on the field on Tuesday and Wednesday. Despite my numerous requests to make Trey Smith available on the podium, the Chiefs declined the opportunity. Perhaps Trey was declining it, but it was declined, at least on his behalf. I was never directly told whether the Chiefs made that decision or Trey made that decision, but he was not provided to us. But was out there.
Bart Simpson can't believe it.
Bart Simpson is stunned, for those of you watching at home. But was out there, took every snap. I mean, Trey Smith looked like in football shape.
Yeah, no, he was never huffing and puffing. He never had any issues. He was out there. He executed whatever they did in terms of drills and team and everything. And he was on field all 3 days, so he never had any soft hand or any hamstring injuries or calf injuries or soft tissue, as they like to call it. So he never had any of that to where he stood on the sidelines.
Yeah. And we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously, the first soft deadline, if you will, of being the end of spring for a deal with Trey Smith to get done has come and gone. July 15th is the next deadline. If the Chiefs do not get a long-term extension done with Trey Smith by July 15th, he'll have to play to the franchise tag, and they'll deal with it in the offseason in the future. But I see no reason why Trey Smith is not going to show up for training camp. I mean, at this point, a holdout makes zero sense. No. He would get fined because he's under contract. So I imagine you're going to see Trey Smith. Any final thoughts on Trey?
Yeah, I mean, if he's at mandatory minicamp, he's not missing training camp. That's if he's not willing to miss any of those, if he's not willing to have any of those fines occur, then he's not going to take any of the other fines.
Travis Kelce also made an appearance, and it was not necessarily entirely clear how much that Travis was maybe at OTAs and period. Obviously, there was the video that many suspect that Travis was in. I don't know what our degree without getting in the FBI surveillance of the video and determining whether or not that was Travis with 99% or 85% reliability. But we were at least told that Travis was out there on the field on the first day and then didn't see him after that. Was in France, Nick, on Monday, took a jet, got back to Kansas City early Tuesday morning, and then was on the field for practice on Tuesday and Wednesday. I mean, that Travis is, when I asked him about it, he says, hey, football's the number one priority. When football comes, it's going to be my number one thing. OTAs, hey, let's face it, he's not going to be flying in at 5 a.m., before a training camp practice, probably. But this, Travis is doing his thing.
As Travis said off the top of his press conference, don't believe everything you read on the internet, man.
Well, there is that. The only thing I really comment I have about Travis, I feel bad for Travis because the only video I was able to get of him on Tuesday was when he dropped a pass during some drills at the tight ends on warm-ups. And then I know there were some comments that was like, oh, Travis dropping passes. I didn't see him drop another pass the rest of the time period, when the cameras weren't on because we're not allowed to shoot the rest of practice. I did think the jet lag started to catch up with him on Wednesday, but I am not concerned about Travis Kelce at all.
Yeah, I'm not going to worry about it until the regular season starts. He's earned his time. He's earned whatever he needs to get ready and ramped up for the season. So I'm not really concerned about what he will or won't be, because the bigger question you're having to answer is how do you replace him long term? And so that's really what you're having to focus on at training camp is who are those next guys who can step up if Travis were to get injured, or if Travis is, if Travis isn't going to be able to be the player he was in that previous Super Bowl victory. That's kind of where that's headed towards. Anything in my book, anything you're getting from Travis this year is just a bonus. So but this offense is, in my opinion, you're having to start to shift who is going to be the star of it, who's going to be what in that regard.
And that's a great segue, Nick, going into who's available and not available at the end of a mandatory mini camp, and looking towards training camp, what this roster health-wise is going to look like. I had 4 players not at practice on Wednesday, the final workout. Elijah Mitchell, Justin Ross, Rashee Rice, who was personally excused from practice that day, and the tight end Trey Watson, a backup tight end. We didn't get anything specific. We haven't gotten anything specific on what Watson's had. He'd missed quite a few practices there at the end of the OTAs. Justin Ross came up a little sore after crashing to the ground on Tuesday. So I don't know if it's necessarily a big surprise that he wasn't out there Wednesday. We don't know if there was a connection, but he did take a hard tumble to the ground. He obviously got up and walked it off and looked okay, but you never know. There could be lingering things from just landing on the ground really hard, Nick. Yeah. And don't know about Elijah Mitchell, but also not practicing, but at least in attendance was Jake Breeningstool, another tight end that the Chiefs are high on, Jared Wiley, your 4th-round draft pick tight end from a year ago, and Christian Fulton, the cornerback. Now, Andy Reid says that he expects everybody's going to be full go for training camp, so that's good news, especially for Breeningstool, who we really didn't get a lot of info on. We'll see about Jared Wiley. He might be the one guy that is questionable as far as being that 100% go by the beginning of training camp. But so, by and large, this team looks like it's in pretty good shape going to July.
Well, and the Chiefs also made sure that if a guy had a core injury or something like that, or one of those, or soft tissue injury, whatever, that they weren't going to put them in a position to cause something that lingers up until training camp. So the Chiefs understand at the end of the day, they want to get their reps in, they want to do their, all that stuff and everything, but they don't really want to push them in a spot to where it lingers through camp. So, would you like to see some of them out there and 100% all the time? Yeah, but the Chiefs understand how long the season's going to be and what's going to be at stake here. So that's why, the Jalen Moore's of the world, you may have not seen out there from time to time, but, him and Juwan Taylor both got reps there during mandatory minicamp, and they, rotated in and everything. So, the Chiefs know when to pick and choose where they need to kind of put guys from time to time.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me into my next question, because not only Juwan Taylor, who had some cleanup work done in the offseason and therefore was a little limited throughout this period, looks like he'll be ready to go by training camp, though. But Jalen Moore, Chiefs backed off a little bit because he had a compression sleeve on one of his legs, was dealing with something. Obviously, he did a few things, but not everything, and that kind of, was maybe a little bit fortunate break for the Chiefs, because just as Jalen Moore was getting a little limited was when Josh Simmons was ramping up. And so as a result, Josh Simmons got a lot of reps. Where do you see that this left tackle spot, where do you think the Chiefs are going to be when they open up camp as far as, Jalen Moore versus Josh Simmons for that left tackle job?
Well, I'm going to use my famous line that is sweeping the Chiefs podcast nation and can be heard on other podcasts, but originally on 41's the Mic. Until the pads come on, we won't be able to test out the next phase of who Josh Simmons is in terms of his recovery from the patellar tendon injury. So we won't know where he's at from a drive block perspective, from a reach block perspective, if he can use how much power he has coming off of that leg to be able to drive defenders off the football. So whenever that time arises, if he's able to do that in their 9-on-7 run drills and really be able to bury some people in the dirt and dominate the way that he's potentially capable of, then, that's the question mark that nobody will have the answer to. So, yes, he was out there. Yes, he looks good athletically, but he's not having to do at least half of what he would have to do on an actual football field when the pads come on. So when the pads are on, that's whenever you will finally get the final answer of where Josh Simmons is at in terms of his recovery from that injury last October. But he's ahead of the schedule where everybody probably thought he was, and that is where I think a lot of people are getting encouraged about where he can be this year and what he can potentially do. But with a player like Jalen Moore, what Jalen Moore can do, and what he can be, because you have NFL tape of him and what he's actually able to do on a football field whenever he's playing left tackle or if he's playing another position. So the Chiefs don't necessarily need to give him a ton of reps until they have to, if they're going to put him at left tackle, if he's going to be the starter at left tackle. So it's more of a wait and see thing to where what Jalen Moore can be at left tackle. You're still wondering if Simmons is going to need more time physically to get that strength back to be able to kind of be the long-term left tackle. But at some point, Josh Simmons is, yes, he's going to be the long-term franchise left tackle. And then Jalen Moore will find another spot on the football field, whether it's this year or next year. But no matter what, you at least have a guy who's played at left tackle in the NFL before and has enough athletic ability to where it can be an upgrade over what they've had some other years at left tackle, protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side.
Yeah, there was a story this week that alluded to the idea that maybe the Chiefs will have 2 new starting tackles at some point this year. That maybe it'll be Josh Simmons on the left side and Jalen Moore on the right. I don't see any evidence necessarily the Chiefs are leaning in that direction. And if anything, at this point, they seem to be somewhat optimistic that with the cleanup in his knee, that maybe Juwan Taylor's going to be better than he has been, and maybe better than he was a year ago when that knee was really bothering him. But all of that remains to be seen. And like you said, Nick, until the pads come on, we don't know. I mean, nobody's dropping your mileage may vary on all their podcasts, though. So I'm kind of jealous, but that's okay.
Well, Matt, if you say it enough, it may happen.
Well, you at
least get a good idea of who's watching.
We will definitely find out. I mean, that's going to be one of the battles to watch in camp, obviously, is to see how that left tackle situation gets sorted out and when it gets sorted out. All right. Minicamp.
Yeah.
Final highlights, your final impressions of this Chiefs team from the offseason.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't there for the Tuesday one, but I know I saw some of the key points. I saw Brandon George made another play on top of that I know some of you guys reported out there. Let's see.
I think Brandon George had like an interception in every open public practice.
It's a strong possibility, but since I wasn't there definitively for all of them, I cannot confirm.
He had one on Tuesday, so I can back that one up.
Yeah. I got from my mandatory minicamp notes, Brian Cook. Obviously, I have the one where they were down there doing the red zone work, and like he just read that pass the entire way, and was downhill on the read and honestly just dropped the interception that he would have had there, and that was potentially going to be a touchdown, and he kind of dropped that one. Obviously, you have the one with Tranquil where he made the deflection on Kelsey in 7-on-7. He was in really good position there, timed the jump well, and was able to out-jump Kelsey to be able to swat that ball down. Omar Norman-Lott had a couple good pressures, and same for George Karlaftis, to where they would have had like 4 or 5 sacks. The thing I want to remind people is, since the pads are not on, that's a lot easier to rush a quarterback and pass rush, because offensive linemen can't grab a hold of your shoulder pads and toss you like they normally would. So you don't have that part of that. I have Jalen Royals down here. He had a really good cut on a pass in the flats. He's able to juke the defender and got another 15 yards off that one. That was actually kind of showcased to where if you use Royals within the first, you use him on the short to maybe intermediate routes, and also kind of sneak him out in the flats from time to time, and just kind of have him down there as kind of a check down. Like, he does have some sneaky good ability that could be able to match up well, especially if it's a safety or linebacker that's having to cover him at that point. Then I have Mike Edwards. Obviously, he jumped a route with ease and picked off Bailey Zappi. He was hanging out there in zone coverage and was able to jump that route. Then obviously Minshew Mania. He had a couple good passes, really good velocity on the football when they were working inside that 20-yard range, that he had the touchdowns to both Brashard Smith and Delaney, I believe. The guy, I want to say he's from Fresno, if I remember correctly. And then Brownlee showcased his ability to track the ball in 7-on-7 and adjusted to that back pylon throw by Crystal Oladokin. Like, you see the ball up in the air, it's lofted, and you see Brownlee adjust once inside, then he adjusts, or he adjusts outside, then he adjusts inside, and then he's like, all right, this will be the easier way to make this catch back here, and then he created the bread basket to be able to catch it. So those are kind of the high points that I saw from mandatory minicamp on the final day that they had practices. And overall, you could just, I hate to say it this way, but you could tell the guys were ready for a break. You could tell school was ending, and I'm not going to say it was the most efficient practice I'd seen in terms of ending on a high note, but I mean, you could tell like they knew what was at stake the next day and how close they were to being able to kind of get away and reset for about a month.
Yeah, there's nothing, I think, more of a downer for the players, especially for the final practice like OTAs, to have the horn sound and be told that you're going into the indoor, because nobody likes working in the indoor, Nick. I mean, I saw Mahomes. I was watching him when the horn blared and they started telling the players to go off the field, and you just saw Patrick's shoulders slump. It's like, I don't want to go to the indoor to finish this practice. And certainly disappointing for the fans. So that's probably another reason why the players, but nobody likes working in the indoor, Nick. So I think that was what a friend of mine used to call playing golf. He would call a lack of attitude drain. There was, I think, definitely a lack of attitude once they moved inside. I'll say this for Tuesday. There was a couple of things that stood out to me. And one was, once Kelsey got back onto the field, you saw him and Patrick getting on the same page immediately and staying exactly who they are. They had one red zone play. Travis made the catch in the end zone and did a little dance afterwards. So it's clearly, I don't know if that was, Colin Saunders' brother teaching him a few things or something, but he had some Michael Jackson kind of moves on that one.
Yeah.
There was another one in 7-on-7 that I felt like Patrick Mahomes just teleported it through the coverage, because there were 2 or 3 defenders that it just looked like afterwards they were like looking at their hands trying to figure out how in the world the ball got past them, and ends up right in the hands of Travis Kelce for a gain. That's what they do. The other thing that really stood out to me on Tuesday was that Trent McDuffie had an absolutely dominant day, and it wouldn't show up in many of the descriptions, because it wasn't like he had a bunch of interceptions or pass breakups or anything, but it's simply in a non-padded practice. When you see Trent McDuffie pulling up before he destroys somebody on a catch, I mean, that's what you see in a non-padded practice. I mean, if this had been full go and full contact and everything, McDuffie might not have had any interceptions. He would have had about 6 breakups, though. And he might have just absolutely drilled a couple of people. And even some catches that might have gone for catches probably would have ended up on the ground, because he was ready to put a helmet on some things. I feel like Trent McDuffie's had a really good camp, but that Tuesday performance, I think, was probably just one of the best practices I've ever seen from a defensive back. And like I said, I just think it was just too bad that there wasn't a padded practice, because basically you just saw Trent McDuffie all day long just pulling up to make sure he didn't destroy a teammate.
Smart. This is smart in general, Matt.
Very smart move. I don't know that there's a whole lot of position battles, though, going to camp. I mean, we're talking about left tackle. I mean, punter, probably the next biggest position battle going to camp. I mean, there's going to be battles for backup spots for sure, and deciding, how many tight ends and running backs and receivers and offensive line you're going to keep. And you mentioned Brandon George, who I think is definitely, him and Breedingstool, if he's healthy, are 2 of the undrafted guys that I think could absolutely fight for 53 spots. But there might be other people that pop up too.
Yeah, I mean, like we're at a point where, I mean, we'll get into this in a couple podcasts later about where the snapshot is in terms of maybe the 53 and where it might be at and that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're at a point where, I mean, for the most part, you're really only deciding technically who's going to be your starting left tackle, who's going to be your starting left guard, and how you want to do the rotation at running back, because I know that's not even remotely close to set yet, despite what you may see some spots. And then before I forget, another thing we're going to bring up, this is something I'm going to bring up. Unless you're at OTAs or mandatory minicamp and you're physically there watching it, to assume you can't get anything out of it like that tells me you're not there. Because like there's a lot that you can get out of OTAs and mandatory minicamp, not from an offense or defensive line perspective, like we talked about on this podcast before, but from a linebacking perspective, you can see how good they are in coverage. You can see how they match up in coverage. For receivers, you see the chemistry between them and the quarterback. For running backs, you see how they can be in the passing offense. For Secondary, you get to see if they can put themselves in position to where, like Matt's talking about, they could lay somebody out. And they also have those pads on to where that's how they press. So they actually get good technique in pressing, but they don't have to necessarily grab a hold of a defender without shoulder pads. And it actually keeps them from having bad habits that could lead to holding in actual games. So when I hear from time to time, there's not a lot you can get from mandatory minicamp, that tells me you're not there. So like there's a handful of people that were there, credentialed media members that were there watching and tweeted out practice. And then the rest were either reinterpreting what was tweeted out, or were leaning on press conferences, or were doing a telephone game where they inaccurately said what the people who were actually there observing had to say about it. So it's one of those unique times of the year where, hey, in training camp, they can go up to practice themselves and watch it, and there doesn't have to be any telephone.
All right, I'm going to follow. I wasn't planning on this, but you kind of touched a nerve, so I'm going to follow up your rant with a sub rant that dovetails nicely into this, which is that the other thing that you can get in trouble with during OTAs in the off season is to fall in love with the highlights. And I go back to, and I feel bad for the kid, because I'm not picking on the kid whatsoever. And I'm not like even singling him out, because there's been some others too. But I remember Justin Ross mania. And and first of all, I say the Chiefs did an absolutely tremendous injustice to Justin Ross, because they put out every single highlight of the incredible catches that he was making his first OTA. And they were fantastic. He has an incredible athleticism. But you and I both know from being out there, we were like, this kid's not going to be making an impact right now because he doesn't know the offense. He doesn't know where to line up. I mean, he was making too many little mistakes. And it's like, these are mistakes you can't make and play for Andy Reid. So it's like, no, he's not going to get on the field, because even though the athleticism and the playmaking is there, it's all these little things that, you just can't have. And I kept telling people, no, don't fall for it. And I mean, those are the things you learn, and sometimes, hey, even all of us fall for it. I mean, hey, and this is the thing I've learned over the years, is that you do not fall in love with any wide receiver until the pads come on, because anybody can catch a football at this level when there's no fear of being hit. And nobody's trying to take the ball away from you. And bless his heart, there's nothing wrong with it, but that was the reason why Demarcus Robinson was like the offseason MVP 4 years running, because he owned every June. And he's a good receiver, but he never looked as good as he looked in June when nobody could hit him. So that's my little rant.
Well, man, it was quite the rant. It was quite the rant, man.
All right, let's put a bow on this, Nick. Is there any final thoughts? And specifically, is there anybody that, whether coaching staff, players, you name it, anybody that you want to see more from, or that you think, that just based on where the and really bringing it back to the beginning when we talked about it at the beginning of the show, what the Chiefs have to improve on this year versus who needs to step up?
I'm just intrigued to see kind of if they're willing to throw some different formations out there, some different route combinations when training camp rolls around, to really kind of be able to counter what happened in the Super Bowl. Are they being creative on offense with what they're going to do, what they're going to attack, how they're going to attack? How does the offensive line hold up from a pocket perspective? Is the Chiefs pass rush more dominant when training camp rolls around? So like those are kind of the big things that I'm intrigued to see. And then obviously from a coaching staff perspective, can they continually be as vocal as some of them were during OTAs and minicamp? And can they continue to kind of really push the offense to a new level and continue to have the accountability that I saw at various points when I saw some coaches in the past that normally may have not spoken up or kind of wanted to set a tempo that they did out there. So like that's kind of the other intrigue that I've kind of got for them, is if they can kind of take advantage of that opportunity to really kind of help some of these guys get a little bit different mindset whenever they get up there to St. Joe, because they started the process there in OTAs and minicamp. So that's part of the biggest encouragement I'm open to see.
Anybody to you on the hot seat that just needs to step it up this year?
I mean, a lot of eyes are going to be on, like I said before, a lot of eyes are going to be on what Kingsley Suamataia does. A lot of people are going to wonder what he's going to be. A lot of people are going to wonder what George Karlaftis may do. A lot of people are going to wonder what Felix Anudike-Uzomah could potentially be this year. Like those are the people that are going to have the pressure on them. And then there's somebody that you've talked about, that punting battle. That's going to have a little bit of pressure to it, to where Matt Araiza is going to need to really kind of push himself and especially be inside the 10 or 15 where he can place that football, how well he's able to place that football on some of those punts. Like all those things combined, those are going to be some of the bigger things that the Chiefs are having to figure out. And those really, at the end of the day, those, compared to other NFL teams, those aren't, those are a lot lower on other teams' list. But for the Chiefs, those are kind of their top ones.
That puts a wrap on the Chiefs offseason program. We're not going anywhere, Nick, though. Yes, July 20. We're less than a month away from when the Chiefs are going to start reporting the camp. Should find out the Chiefs training camp schedule on Monday, but July 22nd looks like it's going to be the first open practice. Chargers have they report on July 12th. Their first practice is on the 17th since they're in that Hall of Fame game, Nick. Chargers might just be worn out and tired by the time they get to Brazil, but
certainly possible, Matt.
We'll see.
Yeah, and then if you want to say anything, since Adam Teicher had his final day on the beat this past Thursday.
Yeah, Adam, they say don't meet your heroes, and that does not apply to Adam because I know that he is the curmudgeon that some Chiefs fans love to hate, but to me, he's the curmudgeon that you just love to love. Adam is one of the best in the biz. I'm an absolute pro. Watching him, I've become a better reporter and better writer watching him over these last 9 years. It's been an incredible opportunity for me. He's a tremendous person, tremendous guy. Like I said, I've learned a lot from him, just from the art of asking questions and doing interviews. Writing, just covering the beat day in and day out, because that guy's been doing it for 32 years. And tell you what, I've never been more happy for a reporter for getting to cover good stuff, considering how much nonsense Adam had to cover for a long, long time. He covered some bad football teams and had to fly across the country watching some really bad football. And hey, maybe those were some exciting days, but he deserved to cover a winner and cover a Hall of Famer or two. So I'm incredibly excited for him and his retirement. I know he's going to have a blast. I might never see him again unless we go to Colorado and go to Denver, because Adam is going to be glad not to have the 24/7 bustle of the NFL life in his life anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, so for people that don't know, I mean, Adam has been covering the Chiefs since the 90s with Marty. He was there for pretty much almost all of the Marty era. So he saw all that, and then he was there for the Ramil era. He saw the Gunther Cunningham era. He saw the Herm Edwards era. He saw the Todd Haley era. That's whenever I got to meet him, was during the Todd Haley era. And that's whenever I started joining on the Chiefs beat. And then, he was there for Romeo, and he's been there for Andy. And like something he kind of said there on Thursday, like I think kind of helped some people realize to just how far the organization's come under the Andy Reid era to where they are now versus what they were at times when they were 2-14 and just had no direction and just had the way how inefficient practices were, how they didn't have the leadership they needed at quarterback and all those other things, just all that combined. Like whenever Adam kind of talked about that, I think that kind of made some people realize just how far this organization is and where they've come. Whenever, they're so used to success now that they kind of forget. They're like, oh yeah, that's probably where this organization was at some point. And so dude, Adam's been one of the standards for the longest time in Chiefs coverage. And so for that's going to be weird at camp whenever he's not there to ask the first question, because we always make sure that, Adam had the floor to ask the first question. Well, at least most of us did. And then whenever he's not there, when regular season starts, and it's gonna be weird for a while, in terms of that front. But I mean, look, he literally got to drive off into the sunset when he headed to Colorado from Thursday, from practice there on Thursday. And so, we all kind of hung around there for the final couple of moments before Adam took off. But you're 100% right. Adam's happy with retirement. He's glad that he's going to get to go do that. And he seems pretty ecstatic with where they're going to be living and kind of just enjoying the mountains and everything combined. And so, yeah, it's going to be weird without him there for sure. That's definitely for sure. And I mean, Adam's kind of the reference point in that room because he's lived through all of that from the 90s to now. If you had a know your Chiefs type game, I mean, that was pretty well in it.
That was Adam's mantra: know your Chiefs.
Yeah, man. He could answer a lot of those trivia questions.
He would ask a lot of those trivia questions to see if you remember. Know your Chiefs. So absolutely the best to him and his wife Barb as they both go into retirement and in their new life in Colorado. And I'm looking forward. He did say he would let us come out and he would go out for drinks with us before Denver Broncos games in Denver. So I'm looking forward to that.
And Adam's talking about sodas there.
Exactly. There you go. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me, Nick. All right. Any final thoughts as we head? And like I said, we're not going anywhere because we've got some great shows lined up over the next couple of weeks with some really fun topics to dive into about this team and looking forward to the 2025 season. And it's not going to be very long because, like I said, we're less than a month away from training camp.
Yeah, just know there is no dead period with 41 as the mic. Because Matt and I already planned out the topics we're going to do. We just can't reveal them publicly. Because Matt, we learned our lesson on that one. But don't worry, others can recap it after the fact. Just make sure you drive the traffic to the podcast itself. But yeah, we got some topics here in the next couple of weeks that I think people will find really intriguing. It'll make them think, but also kind of help prepare them for this upcoming season.
Well, and you mentioned traffic. I just want to thank everybody for helping us. We have a new record from last week's episode. We had 10,000 views for the first time on 41 is the mic. Truly appreciate everybody who has been supporting the show, supporting Chiefs Digest on YouTube. Is incredibly thankful to all of you for continuing to hit the bell, to subscribe, to like the Chiefs Digest channel, like 41 is the mic, giving us 5-star reviews and making reviews on wherever you find the podcast, on Spotify, Apple, anywhere that you're listening to 41 is the mic. If you do those things, you're helping other people find the podcast. And that is, if you like what you hear, that is the best way that you can help us, is to spread the word. So you obviously have all done that. If we're getting new records for the podcast, I truly appreciate it.
Bye now.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHP 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.